Basil Ndifon from the Nigeria Transportation Commissioners Forum. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this fourth edition or fourth series of our conversations. As you may be aware, this is in a preparation for the National Transportation Technology Conference as an exhibition which comes up in October 31st and November 1st. So we have had 3 previous sessions on this platform discussing on rail, maritime, and road subsectors. Today, we are turning our attention to the air subsector. And once again, I have the singular pleasure of welcoming you all. Before we start, please, we will kindly begin with the opening prayer, which happens to be the second stanza of our national anthem. So after the count of 2, please, we will go on to sing the national prayer. 1, 2, go. O God of creation, direct our noble
cause, guide us right. Help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to living just the truth. Great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice reign. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for sharing in those opening thoughts and opening prayers. Yes, as we had stated earlier, the theme for today's discourse is the viability of state-owned airports, issues, challenges, and the way forward. It is important to know that this is a very critical subject in the nation's transportation industry, especially given current developments in our sector. This has propelled many stakeholders to looking closely on other modes of transportation with the aim of reducing the much burden that the road subsector has seen over the years. As we go on to discuss today, we will be listening to experts who will bring in their expertise and professional thoughts on how these can be achieved and the solutions to the many problems that we face in this subsector. Kindly permit me to run through the program of events for this section. We will be taking the welcoming of guests and participants by the Executive Secretary of Nigeria Transportation Commissioners Forum, Mrs. Chinwe Uwaibute. We will also be taking a few goodwill messages from Director General and CEO of Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, the Chartered Institute of Transport Administration's President, the Managing Director of Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria. The Chairman and CEO of Air Peace Airlines will give us the remarks as a special guest. Then we will go on to have the event declared open by the Permanent Secretary of Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development. And then we'll go on to the topic of the day by our honorable guest speaker, Dr. Muda Yusuf. He will be speaking on the viability of state-owned airports, issues, challenges, and the way forward. We'll also have discussants, which will be led by the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development, and a host of others to dissect the subject and give us the ways forward and solutions that we look to bring onto the table. And then we'll have a few sections of question and answer. Then the Executive Secretary will then invite all, or remind us all, on the National Transport Technology Conference and exhibition, which comes up 31st October and 1st November. I want to especially recognize the presence of the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Musa Yusuf, or rather Dr. Emmanuel C. Maryball, Permanent Secretary of Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development. You're welcome on this program, sir. Also want to welcome all dignitaries and our special guest and our guest speaker. I want to say once again, you're welcome. Please, kindly permit me to welcome the Executive Secretary of Nigeria Transportation Commissioners Forum, Mrs. Chinwe Viability, as she takes the welcoming of guests and participants. Ma'am, please, you have our attention.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mrs. Chinwe Viability. I am the Executive Secretary of Nigerian Transportation Commissioners Forum. I welcome you all to our fourth pre-event conversation with the theme, the viability of state-owned airports. Issues, challenges, and the way forward. I especially want to welcome the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Dr. Emmanuel Beribol, Nigerian Aviation Authority, the Director General of Nigeria Aviation Authority, Captain Musa Shoaibu Nuhu. I want to also recognize the presence of the Managing Director of Federal Airport Authority, Mr. Kabir Yusuf. I want to welcome and recognize especially too our guest for today's discussion, our guest speaker for today's discussion, Dr. Muda Yusuf. I also want to recognize and welcome today here the Managing Director of Anambra International Cargo and Passenger Airport, Mr. Martin Nwafo. I want to also welcome this afternoon all commissioners of transportation with us, especially the lead for today's event, the Honorable Commissioner for Transport, Anambra State. I also want to greet specially all our very valuable discussants for today's discussion. We have with us Mr. Wole Shadere. We have also with us Captain Eno Ina, who is the Honorable Commission for Aviation, Cross River State. We have with us Mr. Olumide Ogunayo. We have Mrs. Susan Apoire. We also have with us other discussants that I might not be able to remember all of our names. I sincerely thank you for making out time to be with us here. I also want to recognize the presence of Professor Samuel Odewumi. I want to also recognize especially too the National President, Chairman, Governing Council of Chartered Institute of Administration in the person of Prince Shegu Ochuko Obayedu. I want to welcome the Registrar of the Institute as well and every other guest present with us here this afternoon. Thank you for finding time to be with us for today's discussion. We are here this afternoon to deliberate on a subject that resonates deeply with the future of our nation's urban mobility and the sustainable development goals we envisage. We all stand at a critical junction today where the dynamics of our urban transportation system needs to undergo transformational shift. The dismantling of the fuel subsidy regime marks a pivotal moment that demands our attention, reflection, and collaborative exploration of the alternatives. It is imperative, therefore, that we harness this junction to usher in the paradigm shift towards a sustainable urban transportation system that aligns with global efforts to combat climate change and improve the quality of our citizenry. As we delve into today's discussion that lies ahead, it is vital that we recognize the significance of holistic and forward-thinking approaches. Contemplate not only on the technological dimensions, but also on the policy, economic, political, and social aspects of our transport industry. Our deliberations today will encompass a broad spectrum of options ranging from public-private partnership, professional management, infrastructure development, transparency and accountability, and most importantly, policy framework to drive to drive effective and efficient transportation system. Within the few hours of this webinar, experts will shed light on the challenges, issues, and way forward with this regard. I urge all of us to actively participate in sharing our expertise, harnessing the power of knowledge, innovation, and collaboration to pave the way for a sustainable urban transportation system that will shape a better future for Nigeria and the generation to come. Therefore, I am confident that today we would have a robust conversation at this webinar with the array of expertise that we have with us here today to discuss on the subject matter. From the Secretariat of the Nigerian Transportation Commissioners Forum, I want to thank you once again for your time and welcome to this deliberation. Having said that, permit me therefore to hand over to the moderator to lead us through today's conversation. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you for being very sharp and smart on that, the Executive Secretary. Time is often said to be money, and there is no time to waste when it comes to matters of this nature. That brings us to this, that is the welcome remarks by the host, that's Nigeria Transportation Commissioners Forum, and that is to be handled by the Honorable Commissioner for Transport, Anambra State, Barrister Patricia Igwebuke. Ma'am, please, you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Very well, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to our fourth series. The theme of today is viability of state-owned airports, issues, challenges, and the way forward. We've eaten into my time, so I'll be sharp with it. I welcome you to this series. And I also thank technology for making us all to be here from around the world. I welcome the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Aviation, our industry captains, regulators, and the general public. It is no gainsaying that connectivity and mobility is the way forward in the new world. So once again, I welcome you and I want you to listen attentively to our experts and for you to ask questions and make sure that you fly with us and must advertise our airport, which is new, Anambra International Cargo and Passenger Airport at Umueri in Anambra State. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon.
Thank you. We are happy to hear that development. And as you said there, connectivity is the way forward in the modern world. We appreciate those brief welcome remarks. We move on to the goodwill messages. And the first on the list is the Director General and CEO of Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Musa Shuaibu Nuhu. Please, sir. Sir, please, are you with us? Hello, sir. Okay, it does appear he's having a bit of challenges with his network. And we would move on to the second person on the list for goodwill messages, pending when the captain's network is available. the Managing Director and CEO, Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, Mr. Kabir Yusuf Mohammed. Sir, please, you have our attention.
Hello.
Is the CEO of FAN here with us, please? Okay, I don't think he's here either. That brings
We
us
have the
to
representative here, so I don't know if you can hear me. Director Corporate Affairs, can you speak to us, please, if you can hear us?
okay, whenever we have the network restored, I believe we will come back to take those kind messages from the Managing Director of FAN and NAN. That takes us to the third goodwill message on the list. The National President, Chairman Governing Council, Chartered Institute of Transport Administration of Nigeria, Prince Segun Obayendo. Please, we are ready for your goodwill message, sir.
Thank you very much, and all the distinguished participants here. Kindly and graciously permit me to stand on the well-established protocol. Having said that, my start of goodwill message, like you said, and let me commend the Nigerian Transport Commissioners Forum for playing this very critical role in this sector. The transportation sector, as we all know, needs what I would call revolution to be able to deliver on its mandates, potentials, and of course, effective optimization. So the country at large, and specifically at our institute, the Chartered Institute of Transport Administration, very pleased with what the forum is doing, how they've been galvanizing every stakeholder across the different modes, the 5 modes. Sincerely, this is the way to go, and I cannot but just wish you the very best in all you are doing and what you will still continue to do for the sector and for Nigeria as a whole. So I want to wish all of us the very best of the celebration today. I'm pleased that my well-respected senior brother, Dr. Muda, I've seen him. Let him know that I've always enjoyed his analysis on television, and today I will have the privilege to listen to him here. And it's been a great commentator all rounder, I would say. So I can't wait to hear you speak on this platform, Dr. Muda Yusuf. So thank you very much, and I wish each and every one of us here the best of deliberation. I'm grateful for this privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No doubt the Transportation Commissioner's Forum is equally pleased to hear that CIOTA is right behind these noble steps that we are taking in the transportation sector. Look forward to further collaborations in that regard. We want to take on the special remarks and declaration of the air pre-event conversations open by the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Dr. Manuel C. Maribol. Sir, please, we are all here for you.
Okay. Good afternoon, industry captains. Good afternoon, the National President of Transport Commissioners of Nigeria. Good afternoon, regulators, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by saying that it's an honor and privilege to join you online today as a special guest to speak to you at this conference 2023. Let me begin by extending my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers, the Nigerian Transportation Commission Forum, for inviting me to participate in this important discourse. Air transport plays a vital role in the economic development and global connectivity of nations. And state-owned airports in particular are assets of great significance. They serve as critical gateways that bridge regions and continents. They're also the entry point of travelers and cargo, the engines that fuel tourism, trade, and investment, and of course, the makers of a nation's commitment to progress. That is why it is very important that we need to maximize efficiency and profitability of state-owned airports if we want to get the best out of them. So the title of this pre-conference is very apt in doing this. I'm happy that we have a lot of things to discuss, issues, challenges, and way forward for viability of state-owned airports. As we listen to the discussants, we hope that all this will be very well thrashed out so that we know our way forward. On this note, I want to say that the deliberations we are going to have will be marked by vision, commitment, shared determination to unlock the full potential of our state-owned airports. I wish to formally declare the event open and wish all of us very fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We appreciate those well-spoken remarks. And no doubt, as you have mentioned in your remarks, air transportation plays a critical role in the economic growth and development, not just of the sector, but of the nation in general. We appreciate you. We appreciate that, sir. That brings us to the theme of the day, the viability of state-owned airports, issues, challenges, and the way forward. Permit me to call our guest speaker, the Director and Chief Executive Officer, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Dr. Muda. Okay, so please, before that, one goodwill message that we had previously suspended is now back to deliver exactly what Nigeria's Civil Aviation Authority. Captain, will message, sir.
Thank you very much. I have a bit of a problem with my internet, so I'm not going to use the picture and the video so that I can get my. I would like to sincerely send my thanks and appreciation to the organizers of this event, the Nigerian Transport Commissioners Forum, on a very apt and very important issue on the issues and challenges, viability of state-owned airport, issues, challenges, and the way forward. As we are all aware, significant majority of the airports are owned state-owned airports, either by the federal government or the state government. The private airports are quite a few. And with the exception of maybe 4 or 5 airports in Nigeria, most of the airports are unviable for various reasons. Some airports have been built without thought of creating the traffic for the airports, and the airports become a burden on the state governments, and Federal Airports Authority end up carrying the burden. So airports, when properly established and developed, can be a very viable economic catalyst for a state or a catchment area. So airports could be key to economic development in many areas, many states, and many areas of the country, especially remote areas. But airport has to be a well thought out process. There has to be a reason to have an airport, something that will attract either passenger or cargo to that area. So this is a very, very apt and welcome development on this topic. And I sincerely want to sincerely thank you, the organizers of this event. It's an issue, a burning initial issue we all have to find a way of resolve. And as a regulator, it becomes a problem for us when airports that do not generate adequate financial returns, then they have difficulties of meeting the minimum regulatory requirements, and their operations are restricted, which further worsens the situation of the airport. So thank you very much. We'll participate effectively in this event. Thank you very much. And I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my Permanent Secretary, Dr. Emmanuel Meribule, and all the distinguished guests attending this online conference. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you too, and thank you for not making us miss out on your goodwill message, coming back to give us that. We really appreciate you, sir. As we had intended to do earlier before the goodwill message, now I want to move on to the topic of the day. Our guest speaker, Dr. Muda Yusuf, the Director and Chief Executive Officer, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. He's handling the topic, the viability of state-owned airports, issues, challenges, and the way forward. You have our attention, sir.
Thank you very much, the moderator. Let me acknowledge the presence of the Permanent Secretary and other very distinguished discussants and participants on this forum. Let me also express appreciation to the organizers for inviting me. I would like to crave your indulgence to share. I have a few slides which I would like to share and speak to within the time allotted to me. So I'd like to proceed quickly to share the slides. I don't know. Can we all see it?
Yes, the slide is up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go.
Yes, as we're all aware, the theme is viability of state-owned airports, issues, challenges, and the way forward. I have structured this presentation to cover these broad areas. First is to look at the key objectives of the state's investment in airports, because every state has an objective for setting up the airport. So we need to look at this wide range of objectives. Then we have different schools of thought on states' investment in airports. And these schools of thought are very diverse. I think we benefit one or two things by having a quick look at the various schools of thought, that shapes the decision of states to set up or to establish an airport. Then do a comparative analysis of Nigeria and some African countries to look at the number of airports, and of course also look at the relative strengths of the economies of these African countries. Then we do a quick review of the situational analysis. What is the situation on the ground as we speak? And we look briefly at the risks to the viability of states' airports. And finally, we look at the way forward. Some of the key objectives that many of the states have put forward to set up airports, some of them are as follows. First, I must say that most of the state-owned airports were approved primarily as cargo airports. But progressively, I think because of the lack of viability of the cargo aspect of the business, many of them have tried to veer into being passenger airports. Of course, there are a lot of challenges about traffic and all of that. So there's a dilemma. There is no sufficient cargo, and the passenger traffic is also low. So that poses a major dilemma across many of the state's airports. Then many states also have agricultural endowments and other natural resources, which are used to justify the establishment of the cargo airports to boost the economies of their states. That's a development objective. Again, there is the economic development argument. States argue that airports facilitate connectivity to the states and therefore opens up the states for investment. So the outcome of such investment is that there will be economic development at the end of the day. So the argument is that even though the development is not there yet, the traffic is not there yet, but once we open up the states, this development will follow. That is the argument of some states. Then, of course, road transportation is becoming very unsafe these days. And because of that, I mean, the safest means of travel has become, air travel, which again is a major justification for some of the states. They are not looking at the economics of the investment, they are looking primarily at safety. Again, this is an argument that we cannot diminish. Then, of course, this has led to a surge in demand for air travels, especially by the elites in various states and beyond. Then there's also the desire to join the League of States hosting airports. There's something about the status that it brings to a state when you say that, yes, I'm flying to the state capital, I'm flying out of the state capital. This may be psychological, it could also be economic. But I mean, that desire exists among some states, which sometimes take precedence over the economics of the investment. And a number of schools of thought on this matter, because we don't have a consensus on this issue of desirability or viability of state investment in airports. So that is why I've decided to go through some of the various schools of thoughts around the concept of state investment in airports. The first one is the aspirational and futuristic school. Many states believe that the airports will become viable with time, that the essence of the airport is to open up the states to investors, to more economic activities, and progressively over time, they become viable. So that means the airport will catch up with the development, or the development will catch up with the presence of the airports. That is one thinking. Then airport is perceived as a major driver of development, not the other way around. There's a school of thought that believes that once the airport is there, it helps to drive development, it helps to attract investment, as against the argument that you need to have the investment before the airports can be established. Then there's a school of thought that believes that innovative management could turn around even some of the so-called unviable state airports. I mean, there have been arguments in the aviation community that if there is innovative management, some of these airports that have been described as unviable could become viable. Then there is also the option of concessioning options for these airports. Many believe that if it is concession to the right professionals, then we could be on our way to making them viable. Some believe that setting up of airports by some or by many of the states is a complete misplacement of priority. Given the state of development of those states, Given the challenges, sometimes they cannot pay salaries, they have challenges with funding education, they have challenges with major infrastructures in the states. The poverty level is quite high, and yet some of these states invest billions of naira setting up airports. So there's a school of thought that believes that this is a misplacement of priority. Then in many of the airports that have been designated as cargo airports, there's actually no cargo to support the operations. So the whole concept of being a cargo airport collapses in the face of the absence of cargo to move. Then there is this scalability approach or scalability argument, which means that airports should be designed to be fit for purpose. We should not design an airport that is much bigger than the economies of the destination or the states that is meant to serve. So if it has been designed to fit the scale of the economies, perhaps that will ensure viability. Then there is also the belief that this whole idea of investing in airports is to ensure the safety of the elites in the states in the face of the high risk of road travels. Then, of course, there's also the school of thought that believes that there should be more emphasis on non-aeronautical revenue, that there's too much focus on revenue from passenger tickets and all of that. There's a lot more that can be that can be done outside of the aeronautical revenue. So these are the broad, various and diverse schools of thought around the state investments in the airports. And that is why in making any judgment about the states, I think we need to be very careful to look very rigorously and very robustly and comprehensively at all the possibilities around these airports. Then, of course, some comparative analysis. I'm looking at the number of airports in some of these African countries. Ethiopia, we have 53. Egypt, we have 26. South Africa, we have 90. In Ghana, we have 5. Kenya, we have 38. Nigeria, we have 32. Morocco, we have 25. Of course, in Nigeria, we have 32, but just as the PS said, or the CEO of NCAA, only about 4 or 5 or 6 are really viable. Of course, I don't have data about the viability of some of these other countries, but you can see by way of numbers that, for the size of our economy, having airports of above 20 or 30 is not really completely out of place if we do the right things. And again, the comparative analysis, I look at the size of our economy with the size of these other countries that have even much larger number of airports. As at 2022, the data from IMF shows that Ethiopia has a GDP of $156 billion. Egypt has $378 billion. South Africa has just about $400 billion. Ghana has $75 billion. Kenya has $110 billion. And Nigeria has $574 billion. So you can see that by virtue of the size of our economy, we are nowhere near all these other countries. Yet, they have many more airports than we have. So again, there's a mismatch between the size of our economy and the number of aviation activities that is taking place in our country. Again, that requires a lot more interrogation and study to know what exactly are we not doing right. Situational analysis, just to look at what the current situation is. There are 32 airports. According to those who are industry players, the claim is that only 4 airports are judged viable: Lagos, Abuja, Kano, and Port Harcourt. Although some have argued that some other airports are becoming viable these days, like the Imo Airport and maybe Ilorin Airport, something. But again, the consensus among industry players is that there are only these 4 that are currently viable financially. And most of the state airports are grossly underutilized, very low passenger traffic. Not many of them can boast of up to 100,000 passenger traffic in a whole year. which is far, far below what the minimum is that is required to ensure viability. Most of them are heavily subsidized by their state governments. And again, there's an issue as to the sustainability of the subsidies by these state governments in the face of all the other priorities that the states need to attend to. Then the opportunity cost is quite high. What I mean by opportunity cost is the other things to which the states will have committed resources compared to investing in airports. I mean, there was something I was reading online that as at last year, the state's government collectively has spent about 374 billion naira, investing in state airports, many of which are grossly underutilized. So the opportunity cost is high in the area of, inadequate education for many of these states, for their children, roads, water supply, health services, rural development. These are things that are of higher priority to the citizens of these states. And most are also not able to attract commercial flights because of low traffic, because the airlines will only fly to routes that are viable. If it's not viable, they cannot begin to have a scheduled flight to such locations. So there is no sentiment about that. So because of that, for many of them, there are no commercial flights plying their routes. Most of them are used for charter flights or Hajj operations, which happens, once a year or sometimes just far between. I'm talking of the charter flights now. Then look at the risk of the viability of state-owned airports. Some of the risks that I've outlined include the following: the appropriateness of the business model, because if you are setting it up as a business, then the business model must be appropriate, it must be right. But from what we can see, there is no appropriate business model to support the creation of the airports. So that is why there's a mismatch between the economic argument and some other arguments that has been used to justify the investment in the airports. Then the management of the airport by bureaucrats and politicians is a major problem. Ministry officials are not qualified to be managing airports. So when you have state airports that are being managed by civil servants or politicians, again, that's a major risk. Then the aviation ministry also has a lot of influence on FAA, and that's fan operations. Sometimes this interference from the ministry also creates challenges for professionalism, in ensuring the quality delivery of aviation services. And it also creates a limited space to manage the airports professionally, because if the ministry disagrees with the authorities on the ground, there's very little the professional can do, no matter how well-intentioned and no matter how sound you are as a professional. You are being supervised by the ministry. So if the ministry doesn't agree with you, then there's very little you can do. Then the size of the airports are disproportionately bigger than what the economies of the states can support. Then poor agricultural output to support the concept of cargo airports. When we talk about cargo, at least there must be a cargo to lift. If there is no cargo, then what exactly, how can we justify the existence of a cargo airport? Then the weak capacity of the states to support the funding and sustenance of the airports. Many of the states don't have the financial capacity to continue to support these airports. Then the design of the airports are not tailored to meet the demands of the states. There's huge overcapacity with huge operational cost implication. Then there are issues of regulatory charges by the aviation authorities, which also complicates the problem of viability and sustainability. Because if there are too many charges, then issues of viability and sustainability becomes even more difficult, apart from the basic issues of the economic fundamentals of setting up the airport. And way forward, in rounding up, I would like to say that the prospects of viability of some of the airports are bright if the business models adopted are right, and you also have the right management in place. Not all of them should be written off. If we have the right business model, quite a number of them can actually become viable. But we need to create the environment for that kind of business model to emerge. Then the elevated security risk of traveling by road has opened tremendous opportunities for domestic air travels. Now it's very risky to travel by road, so the demand for air travels have increased. And even from the data, there has been a lot of improvement in domestic air travels from the data that we have seen. So the challenges of the roads is an opportunity, for air travels and for these airports. So this is an opportunity that we need to take advantage of. Then there should be a regional approach, to the viability of this airport. Not visibility, it's viability. Because there's a regional approach, then we will not have this proliferation of airports, even by states that are just next door to each other. So the states should explore the possibility of a regional approach, and through that, they can even ensure that there's connectivity among those states, that they can have a common airport that will be very viable and will be able to generate a lot more traffic rather than having, this proliferation of airports. There should be seamless connectivity between the states so that contiguous states could use a single airport. Again, that is speaking to the issue of the regional approach to the setting up of these airports. Airports should be smaller to match the size of the economies and potential traffic. There are proposals that you can have for some states, heliports or airstrips may be more appropriate for some of the states rather than setting up a full-fledged airport. There is currently an focus on non-aeronautical revenue in most airports. Focus is largely on airline tickets. This orientation needs to change. Then airports should be busy. An airport should actually be a business hub with shopping malls, restaurants, hotels. That is again, amplifying the concept of non-aeronautical revenue. State airports should also be designed for smaller aircrafts because these big airports, all these Boeing things, it's not economical for them actually to be flying to this airport. So if it's designed for smaller aircrafts, then it's more cost effective to manage. The cost of operation will be less, and therefore that will enhance the viability of the airport. Then we should also look at the concessioning options. Each time we talk about concession in the aviation industry, we are always focusing on the big four airports, which are already very viable. But again, some operators in the industry have argued that even the so-called unviable airports, if some of them are concession, they could also become viable. So we should be looking at the option of concession so that we can bring into that space more entrepreneurial thinking, more enterprising people who can come with innovative ideas on how to turn around those airports, possibly also within the framework of public-private partnership. Then bureaucrats are not the best managers of a business. So as much as possible, we should not allow too much of involvement of bureaucrats in the management of airports. There should also be focus on energy efficiency to ensure the viability of airports, because most times there's a lot of complaints about, cost of diesel, cost of this. But if there's a model to ensure that it's a more energy efficient operation, that will also help. Then if operating costs are moderated, cost of flying will be less. I'm talking here now about the high cost of regulatory fees, charges, taxes, and all of that. If they are moderated, then that could bring down the cost of flying, and that could generate a lot more passenger traffic. And at the end of the day, it may not even affect revenue because we now have volume, rather than having a few people that will be very prohibitive flight costs. If you have more people that are paying less, I think that will be better for the economics of the airport and even for the economy itself. Then the general burden on airlines needs to be reduced, to make the entire business of airlines aviation much more sustainable. The mortality rate of airlines in Nigeria is extremely high. What I mean by mortality rate is the rate at which they are set up and the rate at which they die. I mean, although at least in the last few years, it has been better, but before then, hardly do we see an airline spending up to 3, 4, 5 years before they phase out. Many big airlines are currently even under AMCOM on account of huge and unbearable operating costs. This speaks to the kind of challenges and the kind of burden that investors in the aviation business are facing. Then the policy imperatives for viability. Viability is not just only about the operators, it's also about policy. We can design our policy to ensure that these airports are viable. In the tax environment, for instance, if you cite an industry in rural areas and things like that, it's a tax concession that you get. Sometimes they give you a pioneer status. You don't pay tax for up to 5 years, sometimes depending on the location where you site the airport. So if you have airports that are in states that are a bit remote, that are not so viable, then we should design our policy to create incentives for airlines to be able to fly to those airports. Apart from these lucrative routes, charges and taxes on all those, traffic to those airports could be waived or could be substantially discounted in order to encourage more airlines to be able to apply those routes. If you have such kind of concessions in taxes and levies, then they'll be able to charge less, then they'll be able to generate a lot more traffic, especially now that we have fuel subsidy and the cost of road transportation now is even getting higher. So the gap between even the road transport and air travel is even getting closer. We can make it even more closer by reducing some of these charges, especially for these locations that are not regarded as lucrative. And I just have here a list of international airports. This is just for the records. We have the list of international airports. We have the list of domestic airports. Quite a long list, actually, and more are still coming. We have a list of airstrips that can also be used even in place of the airports, again, depending on how well they are maintained. You have military air bases, which also can be explored as possibilities, and then setting up and investing good sums on some of these airports. So thank you very much. That is my presentation. I hope I've not overshot my time. Thank you. I hope you are all still with me.
Yes, we are all still with you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for that very nice presentation. You will kindly hold on as the questions come in. After the discussions, we'll refer to you, sir, for the questions. Very, very wonderful lecture. And we are also very sure the Honorable Commissioner of Anambra State, who informed us of the functionality of Anambra Airport, is eager to put up measures to add the Anambra Airport into the 4 viable airports adjudged in Nigeria. Thank you, sir, once again. We wish to recognize the presence of the Deputy President, National Deputy President, Chartered Institute of Transport Administration of Nigeria, Honorable Umar Iya, and other executive members of the Institute. We appreciate your presence here with us, taking out your time to grace this occasion. We also want to recognize the presence of a safety professional, a man who speaks safety, a man who writes safety. If safety were to be personified, when you see him, you would call him safety. We are referring to the immediate past Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Corps, Dr. Boboye Oyeyemi. We appreciate your presence here with us, sir. Thank you very much and welcome. We would like to have you share your thoughts on the subject, sir, please, for 1 or 2 minutes. Please kindly share your thoughts with us on the subject under review.
Okay, sir. Can you please, IT, can you please unmute Dr. Boboye?
Yeah, it's been done.
Now.
Okay.
Good afternoon, all the participants. My name is Boboye Oyemi. Let me commend the presenter for that beautiful presentation. And he hit it and on the nail by saying that only 4 airports are viable. And the major problem we have is that as setting up airports at the state level is becoming a political tool. The business model is not being looked into, and the viability is not being looked into. So, and a case where you set up airports and you only receive 3 flights in a week, there's no way that that revenue can maintain the airport. It becomes a major problem. There was one airport in one of the states, I don't want to mention the state, before the governor left, the airport was commissioned with no control tower, no fire service. The airport was commissioned. How would such an airport run? The major problem is that we are turning establishment of airports into a political tool as part of achievement without actually looking at the commercial viability. Is a major problem. It is a major problem. And when airports too are set up outside the state capital and you move it to a remote area, then we call it a cargo airport. Like the presenter, Dr. Muda, said, to what extent have we harnessed the agricultural settings for us to set up an airport in a state specifically for a produce program, for agricultural produce for airlifting? And don't forget again, already the federal government designated some airports as export processing zone. The airports like Yola and 1 or 2 other airports. Even those ones that were designated for such a thing, to what extent have they been able to perform, talk less of an airport now being set up for agricultural purpose? And from what the presentation has delved into this, there must be a way to caution the new administration now, and should not be setting up airport should not be a status symbol. Everybody, there is need to look at the need for an airport. If 2 states are closed, why must we have 2 airports there? It's a major problem, and the cost of setting up airports is enormous, and this will have been put into improvement of roads, healthcare services, education at the state level, and the rural development. So I believe that this is timely. This discourse is very timely, and I'm happy being part of it. I will still make more contributions later on, but I align with the presenter that there is need to halt this trend of continuous establishment of more airports, and let us consolidate on what we have presently. And apart from those 4, how many of those airports can qualify for the category required in respect of this? So it's a major problem, and it requires a political solution, and it's a political issue too, because of the need of the way that the money is being misused. So there's need for us to look into this, and maybe the appropriate quotas, a recommendation can be made for them to reason and for us to do the right thing. I agree that there's so much pressure on the road. We have 204,000 kilometers of road network. It was the failure of the pipeline transportation that led to the haulage of bridging from Port Harcourt to Sokoto, from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. If the rail system is working, the pressure on the road will have reduced. And I agree that air transportation is still the fastest mode of transport system. But again, the maintenance of the appropriate infrastructure is another thing, and the passenger traffic. If only 4 out of 32 in Nigeria are viable, then what the justification for the rest. And that the fears are going up with the value of Naira. The fears are going up. I remember when I became commercial in 2014, business class was 42,000. Economy was 1822. But now a business class ticket is 153, 134. How many people can afford it? So everybody's going on economy. And even economy now is slightly less than 100,000. So it's a major problem. So it's scary. It's scary. So I'm talking about the presentation made. So the cost for citizens to now go to buy here is becoming a problem. One of my presentations there, when I was in service, I said, if you give a civil servant money for tickets, he will carry Psalm 23 and he'll go and board the night bus and be doing the Lord is my shepherd while on board. And when he gets to Lagos, he will go to the where we can freshen up and go on the assignment. And when he finish the following day, he will come back with the night bus, pocket the money, but the safety components, the man does not look at it. So we must look for a way to balance this, but the viability of all these 32 airports -4 is in doubt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We always appreciate your insightful contributions to conversations of this nature. I'm sure if we were to give you all day, you would keep us awake all day with your experiences and expertise. We appreciate that, sir. Thank you. We now want to go on to the interactive conversations, and permit me to introduce the discussants. The Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Dr. Emmanuel Simeri-Bole, will lead the discussion. And on the list, we have the Managing Director of Anambra International Cargo and Passenger Airport, Mr. Martins Mwafo. We also have Mr. Olumide Ogunayo, the General Secretary of Aviation Safety Roundtable Initiative. We have Mrs. Susan Aporiaye, the President, National Association of Nigeria Travel Agencies. We have aviation journalist, Mr. Wale Shadare. We have Dr. Yakubu Fontus of Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria. We also have Professor Samuel Odewumi of Chartered Institute of Transport Administration of Nigeria. And finally on the list, the Honorable Commissioner for Aviation Cross River State, Captain Eno, is also here to discuss on this very apt subject. So please, the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development, you can lead the discussion for us, sir.
So thank you very much. In talking about this particular topic, we need to give credit to the presenter who has tried to cover many areas about the state-owned airports, but particularly the issues that he brought forth. Are we talking about cargo, the economy, means of transportation, security that is making everybody try to go by air, and also the last speaker, Dr. Boboye's input that says, in the midst of poverty, security might be the least thing on the passenger's mind. We also look at the issue of competing demands by state governors to establish airports as a pride of the state. But having said that, the most important thing about air transportation is taking you from point A to point B safely. So that brings to fore the issue of regulation. Civil aviation is controlled or regulated by an international body called International Civil Aviation Organization. It's a body that has been formed since 1944. It has regulations that are global. We can't have one regulation for the global body and another regulation for Nigeria. So what I'm saying in effect is, in all this, the ministry has a role to play in terms of regulation, even though we are not businessmen. But the issue of regulation is because we want to guarantee this, the safety of citizens. The second thing I want to posit is also the issue of looking at futuristic issues. By looking at the presenter's comparison of countries with similar or GDPs that are lower than that of Nigeria, you find out that they have more airports airports. But how viable those airports are, it's only research that will tell us that. But it's important to state something, and that is, as economies grow, the need for air transportation will be there. So if we make the airport safe and have the right infrastructure, it's likely that our airports will not be misplaced. However, in doing this, we must ensure that regulations are obeyed, and that's where the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority will come in. Again, because of our laws, if we have so many airports, we are spread thin on the ground. I'm talking about fun activities, because issues of aviation security, fund is involved, and fund would be the one that would do it. It's also important to also talk about Nigeria Airspace Management Agency, the agency responsible for ensuring that you take off and you land safely. With the number of airports increasing, it means you have to spread them thin on the ground. The same thing with your firefighting equipment. What I'm saying in effect is, for any state to establish airports, it's good for us to do the groundwork very well, to have a good plan and to ensure the functionality of those airports in terms of civil aviation safety and security requirements. Let me stop there, and as we go on, we'll be able to talk more. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right infrastructure, safety, regulations, that is very key for state airports development. We appreciate those thoughts. Move on to the Honorable Commissioner for Aviation, Cross River State, Captain Eno Ina. Please, you have attention. Is the Honorable Commissioner of Cross River State Ministry of Aviation here with us, please? Kindly unmute and speak. It does appear he has challenges with his network. The Managing Director, Anambra International Cargo and Passenger Airport, sir. Please go on.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can I be heard?
Very well, sir. Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Good afternoon.
Okay, thank you so much. First, let me seize this opportunity to appreciate the organizers of this program that brought all of us together this afternoon. And I also like to appreciate the presenter of the paper, Dr. Muda Yusuf. I remember we met in the fan conference, and we're in the same group that actually looked at this very issue. I'd like to say that every airport in the world, and of course I'll come back to Nigeria, if well planned with a proper business model, has the potential to be viable. It has the potential to be viable. Like he noted in his paper, unfortunately, some of them do not have the actual business model. I know that by the time I came to Anambra State to take up this one here, that was a proper model. In the first place, it was the Orient Petroleum Resources in conjunction with the state government that thought about, that had this vision. And we're still working towards that. It is a cargo airport in the first place, but along the line, just like you also noted, we added passengers because we know that that development of cargo will still take a little while. In his paper, I observed that there was special mention of the government agencies' charges. I think is one of the major problems that state airports do face these days. Most state airports, the charges are so high, and some of those services they provide, I believe the state airports can provide them themselves once they are approved by the CAA, and the individuals and the equipment that you needed to do that are there. We're working on that in Anambra State, for instance. I remember when we met in a fan conference and Muda was in charge of our group, some of the issues we raised there, I know we started working on them in Anambra State. Something like incentives, tax holidays to the operators, we have actually implemented that, and still looking forward to have so many of the airlines, but we know what it is these days. I listened to BME to talk about the high cost of the flights, which also comes with the high cost of the operation itself. So, but we're working in that direction. And on cargo, which is our trust, the trust of Anambra Airport. I know the government is working towards developing the agricultural products that will bring about the air cargo we are looking at. And of course, Afrexim Bank has been also have a space here to build a quality assurance system that would ensure that air cargo will take out of here, I mean, majorly agricultural, fresh produce and the rest would get to their destinations and won't be rejected. I'd like to also add that the high cost of operation is also affecting the state airports. For instance, power supply is difficult. We run on 9 generators in this airport.
Thank you.
You know the cost of diesel these days. So, and I know that the government is also looking at solar energy, and I know also that the governor of our state, Professor Soludo, has also had an MOU with EDC. EDC is the company that supplies electricity from Enugu down to Anambra State. That's one thing I noticed that I believe is very important for state airports. You see, some airports were designated. I also listened to, I think Boy talked about it now. Some airports were designated as special economic zones. Those are purely the regular federal government airports. No state airport, I don't think, has been designated as special economic zone. So, and there are a lot of benefits that goes with that. I believe that if state airports, especially those of us that were approved as cargo, because almost all of us were approved as cargo airports, are designated as special economic zones, we will also be, we'll key into that, that the federal government is talking about. Of course, airport is airport in Nigeria. It's all going to fly from one point in Nigeria to another point, or from Nigeria to a foreign destination. Of course, it's still going to be Nigerian airport. I mean, the airplanes that will operate here will take off from Nigerian airport and then get to another destination that is with our cargo. I also observed where you talk about the aviation ministry being overbearing and having overbearing influence on farm. Well, I wouldn't say ministry directly on us, but the laws in the Civil Aviation Act 2022, Federal Airport Authority Act 2022, and as well as NIMED, Nigerian Meteorological Agency, and Nigerian Meteorological Agency. The laws are such that they provide, like I said earlier, provide services that are very prohibitive for the state airports. So if by way of looking at the future, these are looked into and are being addressed to support the state airports. Anambra Airport, like I said, it was well articulated, well planned. We have the second longest runway in Nigeria, 33.7 kilometers by 45 meters. We're called 4E Airport, and we're well set out to welcome investors, of which we have about 14 of them now who are reaching to us to come and develop warehouses, fuel companies, eateries, and shopping malls. So we're looking forward to all this, and we hope to get better very soon. But by the way, before I finish, I would say that if viability is determined by 100,000 passengers per annum, we have surpassed that already. But I doubt if that is the viability we are talking about. So let me stop here and listen to others speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We want to kindly bring to your notice all discussions that your part covers 2 to 3 minutes. And if you could afford us that, we will be very, very grateful. Thank you, Mr. Martins, for that. We now move on to the next discussant, Mr. Olumide Ogunayo, the General Secretary of Aviation Safety and Roundtable Initiative. Please, sir, you have 2 to 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Well, I don't know why you're starting with those minutes. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Martin. I think you hit the nail there. What are you hearing me?
Very well, sir. Go on.
Yeah, because I think the service is provided by the government agency to the state airport. The cost that is being sent to the airport is killing, and I think we should look at it in another way. Probably just train them, since the regulators always there to satisfy and ensure that the regulations are met. They can go ahead and continue the regulatory aspect. Why would want what has to be provided by NAMA and FAN? They should be able to handle that through staff that are trained or licensed or have the appropriate certificate to operate on the I think that would serve the state airport. The cost of these services from the federal agencies is
God. I hear you anymore.
So again, I need to comment the state. I've noticed of late. I need to comment the state. I've noticed of late that I don't think that's show that they already have plans of what they want to do concerning aviation within their state. And
we can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I hope for order. I would not that wants to build an airport. Yeah. So, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Better.
Yes. Now, like I said, I comment the states that are appointed commissioners for aviation. For those states, it shows they have a vision and a plan for what they want to do with aviation in their state, and I think that is commendable. And I also wish that looking at what the last presenter said concerning the school of thought, if you look at the scalability approach, this is always a problem. Everybody wants to build a big airport from the beginning. No airport is built from the beginning to make profit. Airports are built initially as social service providers. And when this airport comes, you can map out a large portion of land for future development. But starting big is always a big one. It's always a problem. And I feel that that's where the airports are failing. Because there is competition that must have a big runway and was able to land the 747 from day one. No, last year alone, Boeing, UB, Gombe handed over the airport to for the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria. That's even operating. So we need to have plans. And again, under the school of thought, and when you say they should, in order to the safety of the elite, it's not only elite that travel. If you want to develop a nation, you need to motivate the populace to travel by providing disposable income and provide this like at a cheap rate. And that's why we look at that for these airlines, for these airports to survive, there's a need to operate this what we have in Europe, public service obligation rule or essential services rule as it happens in the US. What happens there is that the government subsidize transport to such airports and they use smaller aircraft. That can be worked out here. And that's why we're also working with in a position to the NCA. We're asking them to create a new class of airlines that put total seats should not be more than 100. And what we mean is maybe an aircraft that has about 20 to 25 seats, maybe about 4 or 5 of them, to make the total seat of 100. Once you go above 100, then you just like a normal schedule carrier. So I mean, those smaller ones can be used for smaller airports and then augment this the essential service routes and the public obligation routes that I just mentioned, which is principally how government uses to support routes that don't have enough public enough flights. And I think that's the position I have for now. I think instead I have 3 minutes. Let me stop here, and maybe when during the conclusion stage, I will say other things I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those thoughts. Next on the list of discussants is the National President, National Association of Nigeria Travel Agencies, NANTA, Mrs. Susan Aporia, here, please.
Good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I must start by saying thank you very much to Dr. Buddha. That was a very nice presentation. I don't know if we have the privilege of having a copy of that presentation. I wouldn't mind. And thank you also for the other panelists. They've all spoken well. These are masters in the industry. So I have 3 minutes. I just want to touch on the aspect. We've all said a lot of things. We know having state-owned airports, it's a good thing, yeah? So, but now there's a problem of viability from the statistics of the presentation. I mean, out of 32 airports, only 4 is viable. Now, the question is, which we have all been answering so far, why are those ones not viable? What are the issues? And I particularly like the commercial aspect that was discussed in the paper, that we need to start having our having the mind that our airport needs to be a commercial center, a business center, a business hub, like the presenter said, because that is the way of them also being able to generate finance income to be able to manage the airport. One of the challenges why a lot of these airports are not viable is an issue of funding. Funding, it's a problem. I mean, they all have to, this most of the time the states can't handle the funding of the airport, and the airports are not busy. I mean, for it to even fund itself or generate any form of income. And such airports cannot even be a commercial hub because nobody is flying from there. No business person will come and open a store in an airport that flight is just once or twice a week. So all that has been reiterated here, and we all know what the problem is, and even probable solutions has also been given. I want to touch more on the area of maintenance. Yeah, so in as much as maintenance and the aspects that was also touched about opening an airport for the fact that you want it to go in your CV as the governor of the state that you're able to deliver on an airport. Airport is not something that you want to just put on your CV. It's going to be a sheer waste of funds because nothing is going to happen in that airport. Then sooner or later you have grasses and animals growing in there. So that's not that should not even be in the mind of anybody saying that he wants to use airports to add on the CV that I did an airport. And also on the area that we need to start looking at regions, collaboration. I mean, if everybody decides, you know what, I just don't want to have an airport in my state so that I will say, oh, while I was governor, I delivered on an airport. You need to think wider. How viable will that airport be? So if you think wider and you look at the economics of your state, you look at the level of commercialization of your state, and you know that it's not going to work, You can call 1, 2, 3, 4 neighboring states, and all the governors come together. That's regionalizing our airports, and come together and said, okay, if we all have individual airports, we will lose at the end of the day. And most likely the airports will shut down at the end of the day, and we have all wasted money. Why don't we look at the most viable states that can host an airport that will service this, our region? Collaboration, yeah? Collaboration is not something for only private sector alone. Governments too can as well collaborate. So those 4 states put together can come together, choose a hub, and decide this will be our hub that will service this state, and they pull their resources together. Is a shared responsibility. That will also help. Then to what I said I was going to touch with is maintenance. I don't know, we have serious challenge with maintenance as a people. I mean, you can imagine recently news getting to me, which with the help of some of my members in Port Harcourt that had access to the government, had to manage the situation. It was unbelievable when the report came to me and they were like, Madam President, we have to do something. We all know Port Harcourt Airport, beautiful airport. And unfortunately, only one international airline is flying there right now. And my members from the zone, from the eastern zone, made a complaint that the airline have stopped flying. And I'm like, why? So upon investigation, you find out that it's because there is no fire truck. And I'm like, really? This beautiful airport like this that is even wasting because there's only one airline flying there. We need to get more airlines flying there, both local and international. That already is wasting, is not running in its full capacity, and yet the few airlines that are flying there are withdrawing because of fire truck. Come on, maintenance. So we have something beautiful going on. We also need to, you see, when you set up a business, you set up an airport, there has to be different stages, like the last speaker said. Yeah, Mr. Martins, I believe, said that you don't set up an airport and just make it big. Okay, I think it's the aviation round table, and make it big once is gradual. So part of the gradual process of airport operations and viability is the fact that we also need to also include maintenance. Should be part of the planning of every airport, maintenance. Because even for a viable airport today, if it's not properly maintained, it becomes non-viable tomorrow, because airlines will stop operating from there. And the story that Mr. Boboye also told us, which is quite interesting, how a governor commissioned an airport without the control tower. And I'm like, are we for real, or this is just a joke? So it's obvious that one just wants to mark the register that I delivered on the airport. How many people who actually know it did not have a control tower? I mean, people like us, the Nigerians will not know. I mean, we'll just be ailing, know we have an airport, and we are wondering why there's nothing happening there. Airports cannot operate without a control tower. So I'm going to dwell more on the fact that to help the viability of our airport, I know there's a lot for state-owned airport. There's a lot that needs to be done for it to be viable. Well, out of all those things that needs to be done, like maintenance also needs to be part of it. States that have owned airports also has to find a way. This crisis and these issues that are around state-owned airports, yes, they are real. They are real, and some of them are actually serious issues. Some of them are actually very serious challenges, but they can be overcome. These challenges can be overcome. All they need to know is to ensure that there's a long-term viability by focusing on financial sustainability. You want to do an airport, you have to focus. How can I sustain this airport financially that it doesn't break down? You also have to look at infrastructure too. It has to be maintained. There has to be constant maintenance of it, which also comes under maintenance that I said is the area I'm going to capitalize on, because from our own perspective, from the private sector, that is what we have suffered from. We have issues of airlines either canceling their flights, either withdrawing on some of the schedules they have because of poor infrastructure of the airport. And of course, we have regulatory reforms too that has also been expanded on. Operational efficiency, airline and route development, and environmental sustainability. Collaboration between government, private sector, stakeholders, and local community is crucial for the success of state-owned airports. The challenges are real. The challenges are enormous in some cases because it's not easy, but there are challenges that can be overcome. That's actually where I'm driving at. They can be overcome if only is well thought out and there's a long-term viability plan. As each airport decides to sit down, let them all go back to the table and have a long-term viability plan on how the airport can sustain itself, how it can generate funding, how they can maintain the place, and most importantly, how they can maintain the place. So once that is done, so maintenance should be also a key factor when sitting down to analyze the viability of an airport, what should be done, how do we go about making sure this airport that we have built comes to stay, is being maintained, and is viable to us as a state, and the people. Exactly, maintenance plan must be part of that long-term viability plan. So any state that owns an airport needs to go back to the drawing board. What is their plan? What is their plan from the beginning to the end? If maintenance is not there, they need to include maintenance as part of the viability plan of the airport being viable. These figures are actually very discouraging. I mean, 32 airports and only 4 that is viable. Come on, now you wonder, why are they all now coming up with the different airports? So I'm not against, I want as many airports as possible. I mean, from the paper presented, South Africa has 90 airports. I don't know the viability of all of them, yeah, but they have 90. So it is possible, but as we are doing it, we must put into consideration that this airport is not just building it. Somebody once said, having a very beautiful airport, it doesn't just end there. We must also look at the viability. How can this be maintained? Because maintenance is also part of
3 minutes. It does appear my own 3 minutes runs faster than those of the discussants.
So thank you very much. I think that's just the area I wanted to touch on, to include maintenance in the viability plan of all our airports. Thank you.
Very well, man. Very well. Thank you too. We also took note of the points of collaboration for regionalization, maintenance, and we are with you that these challenges can be overcome. Thank you very much, man. The next discussant on the list is Professor Samuel Odewumi. Sir, please, you have our attention.
Thank you very much. The speaker, Dr. Muda Yusuf, has done it again. Excellence in clarity in thoughts, simple, well-structured paper, factual and empirical. So well done, sir. Now, from this side, and as a representative of CIOTA here, one thing that permeates all these issues is a low level of professionalism in decision-making, of going into the venture, managing it, the feasibility study, and for us in the Chartered Institute of Transport Administration, the drive these days is to get people to become knowledgeable. We know that in Nigeria, appointment as commissioner, appointment as ministers, these are managerial issues. But we need a high volume of professionals to support the political decision makers to deal with the business. Because if most decision making are left for political operators, we find that political decisions are making and the critical issue of viability is neglected. All the theories and hypotheses and assumptions of that the speaker elaborated on the issue of safety, as a catalyst for development, that is in the future and all that, they will come to nothing if there are no professional and competent decisions. So, and anytime we come to this particular powerful programming platform, and I commend the executive director, and all those people who are involved in the organization of this series. It is important that the issue of getting professional knowledge, I realize that the president, Prince Obayedo, has inaugurated or initiated the new appointed on nominated commissioners of transportation. That's how it should be. It's not compulsory you are in transport, a professional, or you are a professor of transport before you are appointed into that position. But once you get there, you need professional knowledge, and this could be obtained from professional associations and all the associations that are related with it. So that's my first take. And the issue of professionalizing transportation, whether air, road, rail, or whatever, is ongoing. Some states have done it. I expect that our commissioners that are here will look into getting professionals who will be the anchor, who will hold the fort, whether they are there or not there. This is important because all these political major decisions are also very, very influential. And once we take these decisions, the object become unviable. And I said all the assumptions of that it could provide safety for the elite, it could be a catalyst for development, they fail. Because once the project fails on account of insufficiency of knowledge, safety will no longer be provided, and economy will not be catalyzed, and there is opportunity cost to it. And the opportunity cost to it is that the road that will have been done, that will have been useful for everybody, is not done. The safety that could have been provided, even by using paying local vigilante to secure the farmers, secure the traffickers on the road, will not be there. So we should always remember the issue of opportunity costs. We should just not assume that, okay, you do a psychedelic project, not well thought through, and it fails because once it is not viable, that is the dead end of the investment. So because many people have spoken so much, we let the commissioners who are on this forum to know that it is better they professionalize their ministries so that that pool of knowledge will always be available. And of course, Chartered Institute of Transport Administration is doing everything to bring everybody on board, not only for the commissioners, but for the entire nation. And lastly, as a takeaway, I want to tell the commissioners here and everybody that viability is crucial. So there is need for research and thinking it through, because as Japanese we say, good thinking, good product. If we don't think it through, we will not get a good outcome. And there is opportunity cost. So more attention will be paid to the road. It is cheaper, it's more efficient. If you know, then regionalization is the in thing to go. The rail is there now for states to look into. There's no way the road can become unviable. So we should look into that. And these are the critical issues that we get good people to man the ministries of transportation and who are knowledgeable, whether they are from there or not. I mean, we need a core dedicated people. And we realize that viability is, then I will ask one little clarification from the speaker. When he mentions states, it appears to me, is it as states, as a national, as a subnational? I want him to please clarify that, because the bonding of all the airports in South Africa and Kenya, that's the national. They don't have so much sub-regional ownership as such. So when we say states, is it a state in Nigeria or a state in a generic format that a nation also is a state-owned airport? Or, I mean, in Nigeria, as we have a second layer of government that is different from federal. So so I know his paper is still tilted towards state as in the second layer of government, but the examples that we went through, they are all states as in national. So he may want to clarify this. And once again, that's a wonderful presentation. I'm always happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm sure the presenter will add that to the list of questions that are waiting for him. We now want to listen to the man who reports all the emerging and re-emerging issues in aviation transportation sector, Mr. Wale Shadare, aviation journalist. Sir, please, we are with you.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I really want to commend the organizer, people who put this together. I think it's highly commendable. When I look through the people who joined this conversation, I was really, really excited. I can see the Director General of NCA. I can see our highly respected Dr. Umuba, Dr. Muda Yusuf, who presented a very wonderful paper. Dr. Muda, we would like to have that paper. It will deepen discourse on viability of state-owned airports. The discourse, it will really deepen it. Like I want to say, in the last 10, 15 years, we saw the rate at which state government started, or what I call proliferation of airports. Some airports are very viable. I think the Owerri Airport is one of the best state-owned project that I have seen. If you look at the Owerri Airport, I think is the 5th or 6th most viable airport we have in Nigeria. And when this airport started, it was as if this airport was going to just be like others. But down the line, for close to 30 years, that airport has continued to be very, very strategic to the economic development of Southeast, particularly Imo and Abia State. But if you see that and look at other airports, you begin to wonder the reason for why most of these state governments embark on what from the beginning was not going to be a viable project. And there are so many reasons why they are building this. Like somebody mentioned, it could be for political reasons. Airport is highly capital intensive. Again, it could also be as a result of using it. I'm not saying anybody is doing underhand business, but it could also be as a result of, trying to put money into where it is not necessary. Whereas we have areas that the government should have concentrated its effort on. I really want to commend Anambra Airport, because Anambra Airport, from the look of things, is going to be very, very viable. Not all state airports are viable, but if you just oppose it with some of the airports that we are building or the state government are building, honestly, it's a waste of resources. I quite agree that over time, anywhere you have an airport, it brings a lot of development, but we haven't seen this development. We have not matched the resources we spend on these airports with the level of development we have seen in most of these airports. I think I did a story 2 years ago, last year or 2 years ago, where we calculated how much state government spent on building airports, running into 320 billion naira projects. And to me, this is purely a waste of their resources. And the most annoying aspect of this is that after building these airports, they hand over these projects to the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria. FAN is already overstretched. Out of 32 airports or 34 airports that we have, only 4 or 5 are viable. So FAN, what FAN does is that out of these 4 airports that are viable, they begin to spend money to maintain some of these state airports, because Once an airport is built, you can't abandon it. So what most of them do is to hand over these projects to funds. And we could see that even the resources from these airports, these 4 airports, cannot and has no way to take care of these 34 airports. Some airports, you just have 1 flight going to those airports, 2 flights in a day, 3 flights in a day. That airport can never be viable. But I think the state government should begin to look at the private sector and look at ways they can partner with them on how to bring their ingenuity into making these airports viable. Again, you look at it from Lagos to Ekiti, we have about 4 or 5 airports within less than 200 kilometers. You have one in Lagos, you have one coming up in Ogun State in Ijebu. You have another one in Osun that is built by the Osun government. You have one in Ibadan. You have one in, you have the Akure airport. So you have like 5 or 6 airports within the Southwest zone. So how is it going to be viable? Most of these airports are not viable. Even Ibadan, that is very close to Lagos, is not viable. You have just 2 or 3. I think just 2 airlines flying into that. I think they operate 2 or 3 flights a day into that airport. So it's not going to be viable. So it is a conduit by some governments, state government, not all the governments, because Anambra has done so well. They must be commended. The Anambra state government, they've done very well. They must be commended. And if you also look at it, the Anambra airport is going to eat deep into the Asaba airport and is already doing that, because a lot of people who hitherto flew to Asaba were people going to Anambra. Now that we have Anambra, and because of the economic activities in that area, is going to eat deep into that. So my advice to government, the state government, is that they should concentrate on projects that are more important to the people than building airports. I'm not saying all the state-owned airports are not viable. Some are viable, very few of them, but majority of them are not viable. They are just waste of resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your take, and thank all the discussants for the nice contributions to the topic in consideration. This is now the time for questions. The presenters are Dr. Muda Yusuf and Dr. Emmanuel Mary Fole, the Permanent Secretary of Aviation and Aerospace Development. We have some questions. Okay, before we get the questions, there is a contribution. Somebody wants to make a contribution. Let us get it right. Yes, the Director General of Civil Aviation. You have a contribution, sir? Please unmute and speak.
Can't hear you.
Can I speak?
Please let the DG
we unmute him, please. We can't hear him.
I have my presentation.
I think he cannot unmute, so it has to be the host. So
Host, can you please unmute the DG?
So much. Thank you so much. Okay.
Moderator, you can go ahead. I can see Michael Upong while we sort out the DG and bring him up again.
Okay, Mr. Michael Upong, please. We are listening in on your contribution.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Very well, sir. Go on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Yeah, you had blocked me. I couldn't hear me. Thank you very much. I'm more of a contribution than asking a question on the issues of airports. I've listened to everybody. Airports actually, economic activities are to determine the establishment of airports and the type of airports, the scope of the airport, and the scale of the airport. But what we see most of the time, ill-advised policies develop airports and try to create economic activities to run those airports. And in the essence of these economic activities to generate revenue for the airports cannot even meet the basic regulatory requirements. E.g., fire trucks, depending on the type you want to buy, cost you between $2 to $3 million per single fire truck, and you need 2 or 3, depending on the type of operations you want to do. So you see a lot of airports, they start halfway through. It's virtually an abandoned project. We have so many airports now that have been built by state governments. They cannot even meet the regulatory requirement for daytime VFR flights, which is the very, very basic requirements. And these airports cost billions of naira to operate. It's unfortunate because, as a lot of speakers said, at the end of the day, these airports are handed over to funds who are struggling to even manage their own airports. And there are other factors that people fail to forget. The more airports you build, the more responsibilities you put on the regulator. We need to have more aerodrome inspectors to inspect these airports. NAMA needs to train and employ more air traffic controllers to maintain these airports. So these airports are not only unviable, they are putting a lot of unnecessary financial stress on a lot of the agencies, the CAA, FAN, NAMA, and others. It's creating a lot of problems, and these agencies, we are being stretched to the point almost beyond our capability because of this ill-thought airports. And I think going forward, we all have to collectively increase the demands, high rates of demands before airports are approved. If not so, we're just going to have a lot of airports that do not have any passenger flights. I can easily name 3, 4, 5 airports now that do not have any passenger flight whatsoever because they do not meet the requirements. All they do is, we want this VIP, we want that VIP to fly once a week. How does the airport generate revenue to pay its staff? Not to even think about equipping it with very expensive stuff that costs millions of dollars. Runway lighting, airport fire service, and so many other requirements. But there's one airport that has set the way in Nigeria, Asaba Airport. It is concessioned by Delta State government. And if you look at the approach lights and the runway lights at Asaba Airport, there is no airport in Nigeria that meets that. It is excellent. Concession. They have the appropriate power requirements. It is an absolutely beautiful airport. Why? Because it's well conceived and the state government concessioned it so that it be run by private sector. That is the way to go. And all other airports, state airports, must look at that. But first of all, building airports without economic activities that would create demand at the airport is just a waste of taxpayers' money. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those thoughts, sir. We appreciate that, your contributions on that regard. We now want to look at the question and answer session. The permanent secretary, please, and the presenter. One of the questions says, is there no aviation master plan that has been researched in line with feasibility study to determine how many airports we need in Nigeria so that the political airport projects can be stopped? Does aviation ministry not have the right to say no to a non-viable for a cargo airport. That is 2 in 1.
Yes, I'm leaving now. Very soon. Oh, you want to bring this down? Okay.
Okay, it's not my question. So.
I will leave in 10 minutes. Into the last.
Permanent Secretary, are you with us, sir?
We'll be off in 10 minutes or less than that. Thank you so much.
Why not check whether the DG can take the question? Ask the DG if he can take the question.
Moderator, please refer the questions to both the Permanent Secretary and the Director General who is present with us here. I think the Permanent Secretary's attention will be brought shortly.
Okay, ma'am. No,
I think there are other people who can take the question.
The Director General, sir, please, are you still with us?
Okay, we'll talk later. Thank you so much.
Hello, sir. Let me just add a little answer to it. Number one, as we have observed, most of the airport decisions are political, and they are mostly for personal aggrandizement, and they are not well thought through. But to the second layer of the question, whether there is a research as to the optimum number of airports, I state that the number is indeterminate, because transport, any mode at all, is a function of the activities in the economy. It is the economy that determines the viability. So if you do a research and the production is, let's say, 10x, and you say 2 airports is necessary, by the time the economy scale up to 100x, you may need 50 airports. So there is no definite number. Any researcher can say this is the optimum. It is, you can, is perfectly correlated. You call it positive relationship between the degree of socio-economic activities and the number of airports that we service them. I think that's the input I want to give.
Hello?
Thank you for those inputs, sir. Thank you.
I'm coming there now.
The second layer of that question said, does Aviation Ministry not have the right to say no to a non-viable proposal for a cargo airport? And the Director General would have been in a better position to answer this. I think he's distracted somehow.
He's still with us.
He's still with us. He's speaking.
I think he's speaking now.
Please.
Can we leave his mic unmuted, please? He's speaking, but we can't hear him. Can we please unmute the DG? He's still speaking to us.
Okay, thank you. You guys keep unmuting me, and I can't speak. Yes, the approval, the policy approval for establishment of airports is given by the Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development. But the issue, they bring fantastic plans, viable plans. Airport is viable. They give all the figures. They do all the calculation. It's fantastic. You give them approval. They come to NCA. We work with them. Airport is developed. The government walks away. State government walks away, forgets it. They don't implement the plans they have done. Or there's a change of government at state level. The next government is not interested in going with the airport project. What do you want to be done? That's the lack of commitment, lack of sincerity of purpose. You bring the best plan, the best consultancy, the best viable plan, and you get approval and you abandon it. That's the problem we face. Or there's a change of government, a new government comes in, it's not interested in that airport project for whatever reason. What happens to that airport? It becomes a liability on the entire system. It's a liability on the state government. It's a liability on the regulator because we must have people to oversight that. It's a liability on fund that has to produce AFSEC. It's a liability on NAMA that has to produce air traffic controllers. It's a big problem.
Just direct all the questions.
It's a big problem, and maybe going forward, we have to start closing airports that are no longer viable because they put a lot of pressure on the system, which is not acceptable. And fund ends up with these unviable airports, overloading them. They barely can meet their own requirements. And these state governments, sometimes the state governments even demand payment to hand over the airports to fund. This cannot, this is not sustainable, and we must find ways to deal with this going forward. Thank you.
Can I just add to this, please? Can I add to this?
Yes, please, you can, sir.
Okay, yeah. DG has addressed the question as well as Professor Ojomi. But I think the only aspect they left out is the master plan. Yes, states, when I mean states, I mean by member states of ACCIO, are expected to develop master plans for the aviation activities in the country. I know that we didn't have overtime, but I believe recently the DG himself is also working on a master plan for Nigerian aviation. So I guess it's important because that helps you also to determine where and how you have your airports and the entire aviation activities and how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that addition. The Director General, sir, please, we have another question here. Can the Aviation Ministry and agency ride on intermodal transportation to connect airport with railways?
Afternoon. Sorry for the calls. I've been in a meeting myself. Yes, on online meetings and international, but I can't speak right away because I'll be coming to Okana. I sent my driver and my nephew, who stays in my house now, the only person in the house now, to the state CID for him to, but the officer in charge, the IPO, asked me to send somebody to represent me.
Moderator, please give instruction on motive.
And I said, this driver is the person that I'm alone in the airport right now.
Moderator, can you please direct the question?
Sir, we're looking at the last question. The last question, can the Aviation Ministry and agency ride on intermodal transportation to connect airport with railways?
That is a wonderful idea. I mean, not airports with railways, airports and airports connected between railways and railways. That's a fantastic idea, but that goes beyond the Ministry of Aviation. It involves the Ministry of Transportation, whose purview the railways. But intermodal connectivity is the way to go. You can connect the airport with the city, and you can connect the airport with even areas where goods, cargo can be transported to the airports, whether it's agri-goods or whatever for exports. And when exports come, they can be transported by railway to where they need to be. We all go to Europe. We go to the cities. When we land, we take the city transport to the city center or wherever. We go faster, cheaper, more efficient. intermodal connection intermodal system is the way to go, but it goes beyond aviation ministry also. There has to be collaboration with the different government agencies. And saying that it's one of the issues we have in Nigeria generally, we plan in silos. We don't look at systemic view. We don't look at overall view of the system. Everybody does his business in isolation of others, and that's what's creating a lot of these problems. On the master plan, yes, master plan is necessary. What we are doing and NCA, we are engaging ICAO to come and look at the aviation system and then the entire aviation system. And when I say the aviation system, I don't mean only the airline, airports, NCA, FAN, NAMA, SACOL. They are going to look at everybody. They are going to look at the, I will discuss with the Ministry of Budget Planning. They will discuss with the Central Bank, the Ministry of Finance, the Tourism Board, NMPC, anybody and everything that has a remote connection or impact on aviation. They will come, we'll discuss with them and develop a master plan for Nigeria going forward. A master plan, a long-term master plan for Nigeria going forward. So that will be a guide for us on what we need to do, looking at the system, and that guide will even help identify areas of the system that are not efficient, e.g. some airports that are not efficient that can be notified to the owners so that the appropriate action will be taken. Thank you.
Thank you too, sir. Another question. In supply chain, time is very crucial in all aspects. Why is our airport always having issues of not adhering to time schedule, and how can that be improved? Sorry, sir, we can't hear that.
You need to unmute him again.
Are we muting him? I said he shouldn't be muted.
Kindly leaving on.
The Director General should not be muted.
We can't stay. Can someone else assist? Please stop him.
Yes, let's have someone else assist. Then when he comes in, he can make contributions to that.
Okay, I think the question you asked is a lot of the airport at the moment is purely on the schedule of the flights into the airports. So much as I know, the airports are willing to have the flights, except in some airports where you have what we call the visual flight routes, and the weather is below the minimum, then the delay can be attributed to the airport because the weather at the airport do not meet that when that flight capability. But the other thing the airport should have done is to have its instruments, the navigational equipment and the instrument landing systems in place, and that would improve because they can fly at the lower weather information, information than what is available for visual flight routes. I think this is listening eagerly. That is ready to add to this because this question is original. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. In supply chain, time is very crucial in all aspects. Why is our airport always having issues of not adhering to time schedule, and how can that be improved?
Okay, thank you. I think it's more where the airlines are not adhering to time schedules and how that can improve. In order to determine that, we have to define the root cause of where these delays are. There are many, many reasons for delays. It could be weather, it could be capacity problem at the airport at peak hours. It could be lack of available fuel. It could be shortage of aircraft. There are many, many reasons why for this. And yes, it's unfortunate. The case of flight delays in Nigeria are increasing, and during this rainy season, when the weather gets bad, all you need for an airline to be thrown into confusion is for one or two or three of his flights to be delayed due to bad weather or whatever. Then the whole system, the whole flight schedule runs into problem because the aircraft has to arrive depart from airport A to arrive airport B for the flight from airport B to operate. So if it's delaying out of airport A, then obviously airport B flight will not depart on time, and consequently you have a domino effect throughout the system. Then there are issues. Airlines sometimes they have technical problems. Some of their flights are delayed for technical repairs, or sometimes their flights are grounded and still trying to operate the full schedule. Now you don't have adequate number of flights to handle your schedule. So it's a problem. And what we with our new regulations, what we're trying to enforce in NCA, if you have a 4 aircraft schedule and 1 aircraft is out of operations, you can only operate a 3 aircraft schedule, because the problem, if you try to operate a 4 aircraft schedule with 3 aircraft, we all know the consequences. There are going to be significant delays and cancellation. So, as I said, there are many reasons for delays. Some are the problems. Some are caused by the airlines, but a significant number, it's beyond the beyond the ability of the airline. It's not their fault per se. And NCA, we've started giving statistics of flight delays by airlines and by airports. And the next step we're going to do, while giving those statistics, we'll give the reasons why these delays, what are the reasons for these delays, and what percentage of delays by cost by weather or any airport capacity problem or other, so that it can be really defined and everybody knows exactly what to do. The whole public will become aware of the reasons for delays. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please kindly stay with us as there are other questions. From the presentation, only 4 of the 32 airports are viable. What is the role of NCAA and the Federal Ministry of Aviation in the approval of state airports? With the very low viability ratio, can we conclude that a poor job was done in granting approval to the majority of state airports?
Okay, the role of the initial application for establishment of the airports on the policy side goes to the Minister of Aviation, and the Minister of Aviation will set up a committee with people from the ministry and people from relevant agencies such as NCA, FAN, and NAMA, and they go and visit the site and visit the state they want to do this, establish these airports, and get all the information, get the feasibility study, the viability of the airport, look at the area where the airport is proposed and all that, and write a report to the minister. Depending on the report to the minister, if it's a positive report, once the minister approves, the whole process is handed over to NCA, to ensure compliance by the applicant with the regulatory requirements to establishing the airports. Usually this project starts very well, then halfway through the project, a lot of money is required. All of a sudden they find out the navigational aids. Purchase of navigational aids are very expensive because they come in foreign exchange. Purchase of fire trucks are very, very expensive. And so many demands that are put in place, and it becomes a problem. But usually when they give their feasibility studies, all this are taken care of. But when it comes to implementation, it becomes an issue. I have quite a few airports now. They're neither here nor there. They don't even meet the requirement for the visual flight operations, and it's a big problem for everybody. It's a big problem, and it's not every state that must have an airport. There are states that are quite close by. Their capitals are less than 100 kilometers away. Well, for whatever reasons, everybody wants to build an airport, and at the rate we are going, every local government will have an airport in Nigeria. If you go to the southeast of Nigeria, it's scary, the number of airports popping up all over the place. There even airport traffic area are overlapping, making it a very complex airspace for operations. And with the exception of a couple of airports, a lot of these airports are not viable. And this is also applicable to other parts of the country. It's a cause for worry, not only on the viability of the airports, but on the complexity of the airspace and the safety issues this rise, and the demand on the air navigation, the air traffic NAMA in managing the airspace to ensure that traffic are separated from each other, and also as a huge demand on the CA, ensuring that we have adequate inspectors that will go monitor and manage oversight these places to ensure safety of flights. It's a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just one more question after this, and we'll end the question and answer session. The national president of NANTA raised issues on maintenance. How can we follow with the state government for continuity of maintenance in state airports?
Well, as I tell you, when the feasibility studies come, when the application comes, all this are put in there, they're fine. Then when the project starts, the demand comes, it's high, state governments cannot afford, and things are left to fall apart. But what we are doing now is we are going to inspect all the airports, all those that have not maintained their systems. I mean, quite a considerable number of airports have not calibrated the flight navigation system, the approach systems, which is not reliable, which sometimes can be unsafe for pilots to follow these navigation signals because they are not calibrated. So a lot of action is going to take place. A lot of airports will be downgraded. We actually started downgrading some airports. We started from the federal airports owned by FAN. Thank God FAN responded and did the necessary, and the state's airports are going to follow to ensure that they maintain all this equipment that are required for the safe operation of airports. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We appreciate the time you have spent with us and the answers that you have given us. We appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. We now want to move on to the closing parts of this webinar for today. And I'll now call on the Executive Secretary of Nigeria Transportation Commissioners Forum, who will take a special invitation to the Second National Transport Technology Conference and Exhibition 2023 and the closing remarks for this webinar.
Sorry, please, can I ask one question, please, before you go on, please? Just to the DG. Can I? Just one question, please.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, my
Yes, sir,
question.
please go on, sir. Please go on.
Yeah, my question to DG is, from what he just said now, there are some states who had paid for calibration of their equipment to NAMA, and the job has not been done. I know NAMA being the only organization that does that in Nigeria, it becomes quite difficult for you to get it done elsewhere. So what do we do? What is the next step? How can we work this out with NAMA and with the CAA's involvement? And may I just use this opportunity also to appreciate my commissioner, Ms. Barrister Gwibike, who made it possible for me to be here today. Thank you.
Well, Martins, I appreciate your dilemma, and you sign a contract with NAMA. You have to follow up NAMA to ensure our own regulatory parties ensure the appropriate maintenance, whether it's calibration or maintenance of fire trucks or maintenance of the building or security equipment are done to ensure the continued secure and safe operation. But if you do have peculiar issues with NAMA where you've paid, you can write to us officially, and we'll follow up with NAMA to see what can be done. And actually, the IQO audit of Nigeria that's concluded yesterday raised the issue of some airports that have not been, the navigants have not been calibrated, and that was reflected in the AIP. So it's something we're going to be working on with all the remaining fun airports and non-fun airports across the nation in the coming days and weeks. So you can write to us, and we'll intervene with NAMA and see that what can be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. The Executive Secretary, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening once again to all participants of today's discussion. I want to especially thank the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Dr. Emmanuel Merebo, and especially, sir, I want to thank the Director General of Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. Thank you so much, sir, for staying with us, and thank you for taking all those questions for your organization, for the Federal Ministry of Aviation, and for the nation at large. I sincerely want to thank all our very quality discussants. Thank you to all the participants to today's discussion. It has further encouraged and strengthened the vision and the purpose for this platform. We will not relent in providing platforms for all players to come together to discuss for the sustainability of our transportation sector in Nigeria. As has been said from the beginning of this discussion, this is put together by the Nigerian Transportation Commissioners Forum, a platform for all transport commissioners, all transport ministries in our various states and the federal capital territory. And the purpose for this platform essentially is to provide platform for collaborations and partnership for the development of our transport system. And this webinar, as has been said in my opening remark, is the fourth in the series. We've had the first, second, and third. Today is the fourth. We have one more to go. And this is in preparation for our annual conference, the National Transport and Technology Conference and Exhibition, which the first edition was last year. So I want to use this opportunity on behalf of the forum to invite every one of us here for the next edition, which is coming up on the 31st of October and 1st of November 2023 in Eko Hotels, Lagos State. And the theme for this year's conference is accelerating the development of technology for a smarter, safer, and sustainable transport system in Nigeria. I want to thank you once again, all the very solid players we have here today. And we want to say, please, let's make it another date with us physically in Lagos State. We all have a mandate. We have a responsibility of ensuring that we give to our nation a sustainable, cheaper, and friendly transportation system. For further inquiry, please, we have our numbers on the platform, or you may wish to reach out to me directly, the Executive Secretary of this forum, and we will provide every information that is needed. Once again, we want to thank you for this time, and we want to, at this moment, call today's conversation to a close. To all the supporting organizations that have been with us today, we will make our time to meet with you in the coming week. Thank you so very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next week. To the MD, the Managing Director of Anambra Passenger and Cargo Airport, thank you very much, sir, for your time. Thank you for your contributions. I want to thank especially the CIOTA President, Prince Shego Obayendo, and Professor Dewumi for your presence and contributions with us. Thanks so much to Mr. Olumide. Thank you, Madam Susan. Thank you so much for your time. Every one of us, thank you so much. God bless us and have a very good evening. Good night.
Thank you.
I'm just seeing Dr. Alban Igwe. Dr. Alban, thank you for finding time to be with us. I was saying all the presentations will be mailed to all participants this evening. And some of the questions unanswered, we will also get the response to those questions and also mail them to us. Once again, thank you so much. You can also reach us through the emails through which you were invited to this conversation. Have a good evening, everyone.